Welcome to Playbook Broken. The old playbooks just don't work anymore. Marketing is changing faster than most people can keep up, thanks to AI, shifting buyer behavior, and a business world that's being rewritten in real time. If you've ever looked at your tried and true tactics and thought, yeah, that's not hitting like it used to, you're in the right place. On Playbook Broken, we're talking to disruptors, operators, and unapologetically honest voices about what's next and how we actually get there. No matter where you're watching or listening, remember to like, subscribe, comment, and share Playbook Broken.
Welcome back to Playbook Broken, where we talk about the breakdown of marketing and sales playbooks and try to discover what's next. Today we've got Zach Vidibor, CEO of Octave, a native AI platform. It's funny, their website actually says, I was looking at this morning, outbound isn't broken, your playbook is. So it's a perfect deal here. I think it's going to be a great conversation. Make Zach the perfect guest. Zach has led sales, biz dev, growth at companies like LinkedIn, DocuSign, Dropbox, VMware, as well as high growth startups like Bitnami and Smite, which is a great name, where apparently Octave's founding team first met. Like me, he's a student of sales, strategy, storytelling. We're going to get into it today. I am super excited. Zach, welcome to Playbook Broken.
Thank you for having me.
So Octave's a little new to me, I have to say, and I'm super excited to have you today. I was kind of poking around the website, seeing what you guys are all about. It's funny, I hit on this thing that, well, I didn't hit on it, was on the homepage, for God's sake. It says, welcome to Generative GTM. And I thought, wow, provocative and just a great headline. Talk to me about that. What's that mean? What are you getting at there?
I think why we started Octave and what got us really excited was obviously generative AI, shocker. But I think, what we saw was everybody got very excited with the content generation aspect of, oh my God, we all know this visceral pain and feeling of the cold page and the cold start, the blank page problem, right? And was there this magical prompt that could get you anything you needed? And I think what we got excited about was, hey, getting to good copy and content, even we have bigger dreams than that, but even if that's kind of the starting point, you never got to good content and copy just by trying to think about the word choice. You got there by thinking about your strategy and your motion and kind of all the atomic units that go into that. And that was for my background, that was always well, you need to know your ICP. You at least have to have a really well-reasoned hypothesis. Otherwise, you're kind of flailing in the wind. And so we started Octave with this idea of can we help you start generating some of these fundamentals, some of the core building blocks you need? What does my offering do? What are the capabilities that matter? Who do I talk to about this? Why would they care? What are the use cases? How do they, all of those things we all know? It's the homework everybody knows they need to do. Maybe they do it once and then it kind of sits somewhere. And then you end up kind of everything falls into static docs and templates and all that. So generative GTM was kind of in our soul of oh my God, it's your DNA. It's why your company really exists. What do you do for people? How do you solve their problems? Why the heck should they care about you? And that's what we want to be ultimately. We want to be the soul for that of your go-to-market team, is we believe that's a really strategic asset, that everything's kind of built on top of, and that's worthy of a purpose-built home. And now we can do that because of generative AI. It wasn't possible in the past is obviously part of it.
Sitting here listening to you, and I'm thinking about my experience with AI and the kind of myths and the realities of it and where we are today from a generative standpoint, very different than machine learning. I found in your about page, it was by the way, well-crafted about page, well done. Obviously, your storytelling is coming through loud and clear, which I thought was great. At the bottom, kind of towards the bottom, I think it says, not an easy button, because growth is never easy, which I think is interesting because there's this duality to generative AI. I can type stuff in and get stuff out. That doesn't necessarily make it easy. And growth of all things is not easy. I mean, it seems like there's a connection here between, your storytelling, your love of storytelling, sales, and kind of the company you're built. Wrap the philosophy around for me. So I understand.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you. It's funny. It's a meta experience for us as a company. We want to help be messaging and positioning and how you talk about what you do. And then somebody told me one time, there's this feeling of when you're in the bottle, it's hard to see the label. And it's sometimes I feel like that when I'm talking about Octave. I'm just I get a little twisted around. But so I think the idea is really for us, a deeply held belief is we were talking about a second ago, your go-to-market strategy and what you do, like it's like your DNA. It is unique to you in a way. And so these like, the easy button is us kind of poking at, we don't believe in the near term that there's like this way to a generic, let me solve a go-to-market problem for you in a generic way that you can just buy something off the shelf and click the AI sparkle easy button. And so like we are deep believers, and like I'll be honest, like a core belief of our, or maybe I shouldn't say it as belief, but I joke with people. I guess another way of framing it, like I joke that I think there will be like a AI astrophysicist before there's like a good AI salesperson, because there's just fundamentally like the LLMs have not been able to like train on a good source of truth. Like you always see the LLM benchmarks come out and they're like STEM based benchmarks, right? Because there is a source of truth for math and science, and GPT can go read 50,000 textbooks on subjects. But when you go into the go to market sphere and you're like, hey, I have a persona, I want to talk to them about this use case, and let's say it's a warm outbound campaign and it's related to an event and GPT is just going to be a yes man to you and tell you something that sounds kind of good, but it's like it's really not grounded in anything. And so that is like, that is what we really believe is like, the experts at your company that have experience, that have this high degree of context, like they need to have knobs and dials to wrangle this thing and make it perform for your business. And so like we are, I guess on some level, we are counter positioning against like the AI SDR and solutions like that I just go like, I don't think they're going to get you that far, because if it can work for everybody, it kind of works for nobody. At best, it becomes the new baseline, right? But at worst, it just becomes something that you can never get to really understand what you do and what the job is, because it just doesn't have that ability to be tuned that way.
We market to marketers and we run events and write content for marketers who know marketing better than we know marketing, or at least as well as we know marketing. So there is a meta aspect of a lot of what we're doing, which is really interesting. So I appreciate that context. The other thing I'll just reflect back to you is, it's deliberate, but it's also smart. There is no easy button. And I think we live in a world now, like just go on LinkedIn, you can find opposing views, none of which are grounded in any actual reality for anything at this point. Right. And AI, SEO, whatever it might be, it's all very divisive and very tricky. And the reality is that, as you've said, well, on your about page, growth is never easy. And so I thought that was interesting. How do you think about the sort of everlasting, never ending marketing sales relationship as it relates to modern go-to-market?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's part of, what we're trying to build product around is the pace of development, how dynamic markets have become, how fast everything's changing. That's at the heart of it, is like that relationship. It's going to need to be a real-time relationship. On the theme of the playbook is broken, and like I'll paint the picture of like a world we know is gone. But like, it used to be like the companies I worked at were like, all right, welcome to annual kickoff. Here's the pitch. We're going to certify everyone on the deck, and like, okay, we'll check in. We'll do some QBRs and whatever, but kind of like, we'll see you next year. Let's go see if this works. We all know like that is the latency and in feedback you get from that. Like you're just not going to be able to keep up when people are using AI, and like literally now you have competitors out there who are going to send an operator into your app. They're going to inspect every knob and switch and dial. Like, your feature moats are disappearing. So it's like, kind of one of our things is like, where you're really going to be left, like the field of competition is going to be like, how do we talk about what we do? Like, how do we make sure people can trust that we have the experience and the expertise and the knowledge to execute and perform for them? And like, that's going to need to be like sales and marketing. Like I almost see a future where it's like, it's going to be impossible to like even paint that distinction. It's like, you're going to need to be, we are no longer in this infantry and artillery world of like different regiments, like coming together on the battlefield. It's like, no, like we need to be SEAL Team 6, and like, we're going to raid the house together. Like there is nothing broken down like that anymore. And it's all, you gotta be light on your feet in real time. The market can change tomorrow. A new competitor pops up tomorrow that goes viral, and you need to respond.
I don't necessarily want to go too deep into it, but I think the organizational models that different companies have are part of the part of why this doesn't happen already.
Right.
we've been in market for many, many years. We've had powerful tools. AI is just the latest revolution of that. But at the same time, there is sort of like this, like, how do we align and incent different departments who have linked objectives to party together, which is
Right.
proven to be really challenging. So, and the follow-up to that I'm curious about, and how you think about, both selling Octave, but more importantly, delivering the value that you think you can deliver. Like, how does that sales and marketing SEAL Team 6, like, how do they communicate up to the CEO and the board in terms of like what's going on? You read these stories about, not stories, but the reality is, like, money is more expensive than it used to be. Growth is harder than it used to be. Customer acquisition costs are going up. Lead times and sales cycles are extending, especially for enterprise software.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a bit of a perfect storm. And we have the evolving buyer journey that I'm sure you and I could both spend 20 minutes talking about. But like,
Right.
how does that work? Right. So even if you can pull off the SEAL Team 6 sales and marketing,
Mhm.
how are they communicating the value up and the changes in the marketplace?
It's incredibly difficult. Like, we have not solved it yet. I think, we want to be a piece of the solution, and like there's gonna be a lot of things that need to come together. My hunch is like what the C-suite and what the executives really need is like highly contextualized, like qualitative data. What I see and feel and hear is like breaking down is like the metrics don't tell the story anymore. Like, if you boil it down to just like email campaigns, right? And it was so long a world that's like, all right, open rates, click rates, reply rates, like these very granular binary, and like there was enough volume in the system that they were like directionally helpful. And now we're like in a market where there's so much more out there, so much more is happening, everything's harder. You're operating in this like extremely low signal to noise ratio environment, and then like, yeah, what you're gonna go tell the executive team about, like, hey, this campaign subject line versus, it's like, no. It's like, I need to say like, hey, this group of people that we're trying to talk to about these things, like, they seem to care about this, not about this. Like, we need to go build more content. We need stories out there. And like, we want to be a helpful platform in that effort of like, there is really good signal in all the things that are happening. There's really good alpha, but like the way a lot of the tooling is set up is more like, it is one to many, it is campaign based. It's not geared to look at like, hey, when we talk to these kinds of people at these kinds of companies and we talk about these kinds of problems, like, oh, like there's a triangulation, but like that happens across all types of campaigns and phone calls and touch points. And like, you need to be able to synthesize like, oh, that's out there in the universe. Like, we have something that matters, but like, how do we find that in all the mess? And like, I think that's what the executives want on the board deck, if you will, is like, who cares about what we do? What is the problem we really solve? And how the hell do we go talk about it?
You can unpack this in a bunch of different ways. I think that expectations are kind of expectations are still very high when reality is sort of like, there's a lag in what's actually happening in the marketplace. I think that's probably always true in times of radical change. I don't know yet. I don't think any of us know fully yet what the agentic future looks like from a buyer journey standpoint. Like, in the future, how much traffic are we getting that's actually bot driven? How many leads are we getting that actually there was no human there? Right. And it's just aggregating information for a human who will look at it in a different context. Am I a bot? Maybe you're a bot. I don't know. Like, am I just a disembodied voice? Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, great setup. And I think it's a good segue to kind of the core of the conversation, which is playbooks are breaking. I'm curious, talk to me about, in any context you want, but, and one of the things I love about talking to really smart people building smart software is that you've studied the market, right? I can look at it from the brand side and say, here's, SEMrush's problem. But, I love getting the context of somebody who is talking to lots of different prospects and customers, because it's like a fire hose of like use cases and challenges, and they're all different in different contexts. But like, broadly speaking, the go-to-market playbook, we referenced it a couple of times. What's broken and what happens next?
Let's see if I can control myself. I'm going to need to save some breath here. I think what's fundamentally big picture, I think what is broken, or like that the market is kind of broken, is obviously like there is just so much choice out there, right? Like there are so many good choices now, like, and this has been happening over a long period of time, and now it's just exploded, where there are a lot of ways to solve a problem, right? If we're just like boiling this down into tech, which is like obviously more my home turf, there's so much good software out there. It's all overlapping. And so it's become incredibly hard for buyers to figure out what is going on in the midst of like the volume and intensity of everything coming at them has just exploded. So they're reeling, right? They're going like, whoa, and backing away, and response rates are going down and all those things. And meanwhile, organizations, I don't think have like adapted quick enough to that. So they're out there with a like, and again, I'm not picking on anybody, but just like illustratively, like companies were still going like, hey, we make financial services companies more secure. Why does no one care about that anymore? And it's like, well, they do care. There's now 1,000 companies that say that, And so like, I think like, again, self-serving, but like where we believe like what people do care. People still have the same problems. Actually, probably the intensity of the problems is greater because there's just more entropy in the universe, but they're just like, they don't know where to go. They don't know who to trust. So you need to be like incredibly specific and kind of like potent with your message. Like you need to get, in this scenario, you need to go like, hey, like we help digital native fintechs that are signing up consumers, detect fraud and risk earlier in the onboarding process or something. And then somebody can go like, oh, okay, like I care about that or not. And so I think that's where like the kind of new playbook, and again, like that we want to be a part of emerges is like, how do you like contextualize what you do on a individual basis? I think for too long, the old playbook was geared around ICPs and TAMs and markets and segments that were really these like, it was just firmographic filters you pulled out of your data provider, and you're just like, okay, you squint at it and you're like, all right, financial services companies, over 1,000 employees between 500 million and 2 billion in revenue. And you're like, okay, like there's enough companies in there. But like within that, you're going like, all right, well, if you sell insurance, that's very different than if you're a bank. You're both financial service. And hey, if you sell property and casualty, that's way different than life insurance. Like you just now are required to get so much closer to like your customer and their problem. And I think it's good. I like it's a good forcing function.
Do you think I'm trying to interpret what you're saying in my own frame of reference? Are you talking about true one-to-one personalization? Or are you talking more about like fluid, intelligent? Because I agree, by the way, like the notion of like 1,000, companies that are a certain size, like it's already more complicated than that because there's multiple buyers and multiple stakeholders and the rest of it, right? So are you driving at one-to-one, or are you driving at more fluid, like swarm mentality? I'm just trying to figure out what you're driving at.
I think it's a blend of both of those things. I think there is, I would argue, some parts of the market have gotten a little bit carried away with the hyper personalization on the one-to-one being this like goal in and of itself of like, how can I just wrap every like personal characteristic I know about you and your demographic data into B2B mode? And like, it gets kind of like, yeah, we've lost the plot. Like, you don't need to tell people what school they went to. Like, they know,
right.
And so, there's some of that where I go, like lost the plot over there. So I think it is a blend of like, yeah, how do we speak to a individual, but like in a position that we understand really well, in a role at this type of company, in this type of market, at this type of stage, with this type of problem, with this type of dynamics in how they sell and their customer and how they monetize. And it's like, I think that's where like the depth needs to go and become more fluid. To your point, is like, you need to understand the pressures on the different types of people and businesses. And yeah, that looks different if you're a finance leader versus an IT leader in an organization. And so, all right, how do you also contextualize the value prop for your different stakeholders? And like, that's where it lies for us, is like, I would say you probably lose the plot if you go too crazy into like, I need to speak to, Bob at Sony that, has been there for 11 years. And, it's like some of that is valuable, but I think you end up going too far and like drifting away from the like, hey, like we kind of need to be like clear and precise enough to also run fast experiments and tests like, hey, with little clusters that look like this. Like, do they care about what the hell we're saying? No. All right, let's test something else. Like, how do you just like create a flywheel faster on a really small granular scale?
That feels to me, what you just said there feels to me like a vision for a future fluid playbook. And I had somebody on the show last week who was taking umbrage with like the word playbook. A playbook is like a thing, right? It's a book, like in books, when they're written, they're done. And like, okay, that's an interesting concept. And so if the playbook's never done because you're always iterating it, you can still call it a playbook. I mean, that's, semantics, whatever. But like the notion that a playbook is a real-time instrument. The analogy I think I used on that show was, I said, it sort of feels like autopilot if you're an airplane pilot, right? Like it will get you where you want to go, and you can kind of take a nap for a couple of minutes. But at the same time, if there's trouble or if there's an issue, not only do you want, from an AI standpoint, human in the loop, but you want to be able to adjust it. Like the playbooks of the future, when you think about agentic capabilities that are here and or coming online, it does get pretty wild. And I think I go back to the question I had earlier about the sort of marketing and sales coordination. In the future, is marketing sales it's going to have to be SEAL Team 6, to your point, right? There's just no way this is going to work if we keep lines like that. It doesn't feel like it can work. The playbook's going to break.
Yeah, I totally agree. I believe it in my heart of hearts. And funny tangent, but now that's so funny about a playbook. I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight. I'm like, I tell people all the time, I'm like, all your stuff, it's static decks and docs. Like, that's the enemy. And now I'm like, oh, a book is static. So
she said that to me, and I was like, damn it.
Yeah, damn it. But yeah, like I think these, there's how AI and agentic workflows like impact the actual org structure. I think that is like what we're going to really start to see play out, because you're not going to be able to move fast. In my belief, you're not going to be able to move fast enough and compete if you're like, all right, I'm revenue marketing, I'm content marketing, I'm field marketing, I'm industry PMM for all these flavors. Okay, I'm the sales team, I'm demand gen. And it's like, whoa. Like, we got to be so in lockstep and so focused, and like the risk of like confusing our customers in this like hyper competitive market, like it's way too high. And like, our contention is like, the field of competition is really going to come back to messaging and brand and how you tell your story. Like, software development is getting easier a lot faster, right? All your product moats and your feature gaps and these levers that you have to like drive technical differentiation, like those are going to get ripped away from you really quick. And then you're going to be forced to fall back on like, okay, man, we got to talk to people really clearly about why we're different, how we're so valuable to them, blah, blah, blah. And like, how can you be two arms on like, different bodies doing that? Like you need to be fused completely.
Yeah. What you just said is important and deep. And there's a couple of things I just wrote down a note. Like you were saying something about, my interpretation was moats, because I had this conversation with somebody about moats. Like, what is defensible about your thing in a future where software development is so easy? I vibe coded something the other night that's really cool. Like, it's just, I'm not a coder, but like I have a superpower now. Like, I'm a secret coder. Not that it's the greatest code in the world, but it's like there's something happening here. So when you build a product, whatever that product is, in the case of software, right? You're building a UI, you're building an orchestration layer, you're building a data layer.
Yeah.
It's like, what's defensible in the future when you think about agents and, like you get into things like MCP servers and your brain just kind of goes, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah.
Have you heard of the concept of Martech's law?
No.
So Martech's law is by a guy named Scott Brinker, who's a good friend of the Third Row Media family. Scott writes a blog called Chief Martech. He's a senior VP or a VP at HubSpot in their ecosystem platform group. I'm pretty sure he's the author of it. And Martech's law is pretty simple. It basically says that, I'm oversimplifying for point, like technology is going to happen faster than you can adjust as humans. It's going to exponentially grow, and our human ability to change is only so fast. I think that's what's interesting about the moment that we're in today, which is we have truly super powerful, super intelligent, nearly alien technology, like at our fingertips on my phone. I can talk to it right now. I might be one. And so but my organization behind me is in some kind of bell curve stage, like frozen in fear, super excited, doesn't know what to do. And then there's people on the edge. And so, you like Octave, you guys are building this thing that is using this incredibly new powerful technology at the same moment where the old playbooks are breaking, in part because of the technology, but also in part because of the market and changes in buyer behavior.
Right.
It's really complicated, which is why playbooks are broken.
It's really hard. It's a challenging time. And I think, the thing when I'm talking to customers and prospects a lot, like, and when we're having fun conversations like this about like, what the hell is going on? I think I would say one of the things like other people building sales and Martech, I think is they're not quite seeing is they're still in this like, how do I drive sales efficiency? How do I drive and they're just like, they're not, hey, you got to like look left and right. Hey, AI is going to impact you're about to have 100 times more competitors than you ever had. And like the year after, you're gonna have 1,000 times more competitors. Cause like every little feature and like cool little whiz bang, like that is gonna be vibe coded by somebody in a night. And they're gonna be able to go, oh, you're a regional mattress distributor. I got the perfect app for you. I'll build it and it'll be so damn cheap. It'll undercut any ERP. It's just like, I don't think it's like, I tell people, I'm like, don't look for these. Like, if you think you're gonna get like 100x, 1000x ROI from like these AI investments, like you're not, because it's touching everything. You're going to need to do it everywhere just to keep up. Like if you want to win, you got it. You just have to let it permeate every process. And it's not like this, like, ooh, I got the magic fairy dust that's going to let me just like rip ahead of the market. Like, sorry, like it's just getting way harder, way more competitive. And you're going to need to do it everywhere just to keep up. I tell people all the time, like, when you buy Octave, like I'm not promising you 100x return on this. I'm promising you that like I can help you stay at the front of the pack. There's going to be laggards, but like be prepared. There's stuff out of my control. Like you're going to have a lot more competition, and that's just going to make everything harder.
I think that's probably prudent advice. I think that I'm reflecting in my own mind, like the shift from, and I've said this before, not to you, but the shift from kind of pre-internet to post-internet. If you look at late 80s, early 90s to late 90s, early 2000s, something fundamentally shifted. It took us, let's say 10 years of time to go from A to B, where it was like pre-commercial to commercial. I think the agentic thing is happening now. It's, within 2 years, 18 months, I think it's like, well, we're all gonna have agents and personal agents, the rest of the stuff. And I don't think anybody can see really. You can be smart and you can kind of go, it'll probably look something like this. The mitigating factor, I think, is humans. I think that's the problem. And you've also got a shift in generations. We've got younger generations now getting to the age where they're decision makers and they buy very differently. They consume media very differently. So right. Yeah, this is like, I think that the go-to-market motion stuff, which all of the metrics at the board level, inside the marketing and sales teams, they're all the old playbook. Like, I know they are. I mean, I would bet money they are. I don't think very many companies have really fully shifted completely. I think they're testing and experimenting, but it really does mean that who can see around that next corner sooner than the rest of them is going to have a decided advantage. And clearly AI is going to be part of that story.
It's going to be a difficult change, right? You have decades of tooling and systems that are really geared around quantitative activity measurement, task management, forecasting. Like, okay, all those things are great and necessary, but I do think this is like there's a paradigm shift that we're in the midst of. We think might happen, but like, who knows? And like, it's gonna be really hard to take a bunch of systems that are just they're rows and columns, at the bottom that like they don't know anything about what you do. It's gonna be a fun time for change.
There's a bunch of different directions to go, but I think that captures a lot of it. And I think from a playbook breakdown standpoint, you really are talking about going from state A to state A1 to B, right? And it's going to be staged. I think part of the challenge that I would sort of advise people who might be watching or listening is like, take a breath and think about what's really going on, but don't wait too long. There's a weird thing happening here, but I think that, like, from my own experience, getting these conversations, and it's like, there's a bunch of these use cases, but they're incremental to what we do today. Sure, generative AI can help speed you up today from a sales enablement standpoint, whatever it might be. But again, the factors are changing really fast. So like using your imagination to sort of go, well, what might happen? I mean, if agents truly end up, for example, in this case, being the front end of a buying journey, and someone deploys a CFO agent, a CMO agent, head of sales agent, a board agent to go look at a space, well, you've really now almost shortcut the entire process that we all know and love and also hate into something different. And I'm just fascinated by it. I mean, I think that's why I wanted to do this podcast, because I just want to talk to as many people as I can around, like, how do you deal with this? Like, this is crazy. And I was just entering the workforce in early 90s and my first internet job was 93. And I just remember going to these meetings and saying, like, no, like, websites are a thing. They're a thing. They're going to be really important for branding and for this and that. And back then people were like, no, they're not. And it's like, well, I know I got lucky once. I don't know if I get lucky again with AI, but I think it's kind of a foregone conclusion. Thanks for that. Before we wrap up, I want to talk about how, like, you, Zach, personally get things done. I'm kind of obsessed with this idea of forcing myself to do things. And it's a weird way to say it, I think, like, force yourself. But whether it's personal, professional, tell me about your process. You've clearly done the right things. You're CEO of a company. That's exciting. I am too. That's exciting. But I had to force myself to do a lot of things. I'm reflecting on what those moments were like. So tell me about your process when you're faced with stuff. Like, how do you push through?
Oh man, it's a hard question. I feel like I'm having one of those moments right now. I got to push through a hard question right now. I'm like, what is the process? Because I think I have been, and thank you. I feel we've worked really hard. We've also been fortunate and good time and place and all that. I think, how do I force myself to, where I try and be really honest with myself is, like, whatever I'm trying to do at the company and rally people around, like, I need to get myself really excited and really passionate about it. And if I'm not a true believer myself, like, that, I guess that's my barometer. And it takes a lot of, like, okay, what do I need to do to believe and really push myself harder? Is it research? Is it building something? Is it showing a customer I have something that's, like, scary because it's V0.1, but if I get a cool reaction, I'm gonna go, okay, that's gonna let me push and, like, let's go invest and build this. And I think that's me. And I'm kind of just, like, thinking through this live. Like, it's not something I put a ton of thought into, to be honest. But I think that's probably my, like, how do I push through hard stuff is just like, all right, one of my favorite quotes or isms ever is strong convictions loosely held. Like, listen to the data, listen to the signals, listen to your gut. Like, I try and be really in tune with, like, my gut instinct and then run with it. But as soon as you're shown you're wrong, no ego. Like, that is, like, you got to drop it right away. And I guess, like, maybe those two things, like, balance each other well, of, like, okay, turn yourself into a true believer. What does it take? Like, punch through. And then on the other side, like, be ready to drop it instantly. Like, if you're wrong, no ego. Thank you for showing me I'm wrong. And, like, that's, we're on a startup journey. We've made a ton of mistakes already. We've gotten some things right. We need to get more right than wrong, but it's like, you got to just have that muscle.
I love that answer. It's a great answer. I saw you fighting through it, but you got there. You definitely got there. The loosely held stuff is really important. You should be making mistakes as a startup. Like, I mean, we should all be making mistakes. And I mean, what's the quote about, if you're not making mistakes, you're not trying hard enough? I think that's what it is, right? Yeah. And so it's hard to make mistakes because then you feel like you're going to get judged. But I think, look, it has to all be about learning and growing. Like, I don't know any other way to think about it. Thank you for indulging me in that question. We covered a ton of ground. I think, the SEAL Team 6, marketing and sales getting on the same page, and maybe even blurring the lines and disappearing, the shifting buyer journey, the moats of how you think about what's defensible, how you go to market as an organization. Like, great conversation. Thank you so much for indulging me and going on the journey. Before we go, tell us a little bit about you, where we can find you. Tell us a little bit about Octave. Where do we connect?
Absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn. Got my name on the screen. Look me up. I'm here. DM me. Love to chat about all this kind of stuff. So always open for exploration into outer space. So thank you for facilitating here. But yeah, octavehq.com. Please go check us out. Octave is free. So you don't need to come armed or prepared with any homework. Come sign up. All you need is your website, and we'll start showing you how we can help bring some precision to your go-to-market fundamentals. And then if you get excited enough, you can build some agents and get some APIs and start plugging that into some cool tools. And of course, we'll be there to help you. Let us know. And, like, we love building cool stuff and helping people test this out. And we know this is a new world. I'd say I guess maybe tying this all back together, our sales motion and our playbook is very much oriented around success. If we can't make people successful with a new type of tool, like, that's all that matters. Like, we are not hey, I need you to buy this big thing and just believe the dream. It's behind the door. It's like, we are very much, hey, you got to feel this thing. You got to poke it and touch it, and we will help you set this up and prove it to you. So I guess that would be my ask. Reach out to me. I'm here. I'll take anyone through the app myself, but you can check it out without me too, and no one looking over your shoulder.
Awesome. The modern day playbook in motion right there, right out of his mouth. Thank you for watching Playbook Broken. You can find us on YouTube, martech.org, all the audio channels, basically everywhere. If you have comments, feedback from me, leave a comment, find me on LinkedIn, whatever you want to do. And thanks for watching.